Most people move through life emotionally, reacting, complaining, forcing outcomes, but ancient strategists saw the world differently. They understood something modern people constantly forget.
Power does not come from force alone. It comes from understanding change, calculation, and human motivation, and that is exactly why the art of war still matters today. Today, we're talking about one of the most misunderstood books in human history, The Art of War. Most people have heard the name. Very few have actually understood it, because most readers only see military tactics. But that's surface-level thinking. The real reason this book became one of the most influential strategy texts ever written is because it reveals the hidden mechanics behind reality itself: human behavior, decision-making, power, timing, adaptation, survival. And if you condense the entire philosophy of the book into just 3 ideas, they would be adaptation, calculation, incentive. Or in simpler terms, how the world changes, how intelligent people think, and why human beings do what they do. Once you understand these 3 principles, you begin seeing life differently. Suddenly, office politics makes sense, social dynamics make sense, power structures make sense, even your own mistakes start becoming clearer, because you stop looking at life emotionally and start seeing systems. 1. Adaptation. Reality never stays still. One of the most famous lines in The Art of War says, "The art of war is based on deception." Most people misunderstand this immediately. They assume it means manipulation or trickery. But the deeper meaning is far more philosophical. It means reality is fluid. Circumstances constantly shift. Power shifts. Opportunities shift. Human behavior shifts. Nothing remains static. Another famous idea from the text compares strategy to water. Water has no fixed shape. Pour it into a cup, it becomes the cup. Pour it into a river, it becomes the river. Water survives because it adapts. And psychologically, this is one of the most important lessons in life. Rigid people break under pressure. Adaptive people survive change. Most failures in life are not caused by lack of effort. They are caused by outdated thinking. People try using the same mindset in a completely different environment. But the world keeps moving. Technology changes. Economies change. Social behavior changes. Attention changes. And people who refuse to evolve eventually become irrelevant. Strategic thinkers understand something crucial. The goal is not to cling to fixed methods. The goal is to understand underlying patterns, because circumstances change, but human nature repeats itself. 2. Calculation. Every victory is decided before the battle begins. Modern people romanticize sudden success. Ancient strategists didn't. They understood that outcomes are usually determined long before action becomes visible. One of the central ideas in The Art of War is calculation, preparation, probability, positioning, not emotional gambling. The text repeatedly emphasizes that intelligent leaders calculate variables before taking action: resources, timing, terrain, morale, weakness, momentum. In modern life, this looks a lot like data analysis and strategic forecasting. The reason highly successful people often appear lucky is because invisible preparation happened long before visible results. And this is where modern society becomes dangerous. People admire stories about impossible underdogs winning against overwhelming odds. But in reality, most miracles are carefully engineered advantages hidden beneath the surface. The weaker side wins only when it understands the game more accurately. That applies to business, negotiation, career strategy, even relationships. Emotionally reactive people rush into situations blindly. Strategic people calculate first, then move. This is why calm people often outperform aggressive people, because emotional intensity is not strategy. Precision is. 3. Incentives. Human nature runs on self-interest. This may sound uncomfortable, but one of the coldest truths in strategy is this: human behavior is heavily shaped by perceived benefit. The Art of War says, move when there is advantage, stop when there is not. That principle sounds ruthless at first, until you realize it describes everyday life. Why do people stay in jobs they hate? Because uncertainty outside feels riskier. Why do people suddenly switch companies for higher pay? Because incentives changed. Why do social alliances shift over time? Because interests shift. This is not always morality, it is psychology.
Human beings naturally move toward perceived gain and away from perceived danger, and strategic thinkers understand this deeply. They do not rely only on promises, emotion, or idealism.
They study incentives, because incentives quietly shape behavior more consistently than emotion does. This is why intelligent people stop asking, "Why did people betray me?" and start asking,
What motivations were influencing them? That question changes everything. The hidden structure behind these three ideas. So how do these principles connect? Adaptation, calculation, incentive.
Together, they form an entire framework for understanding reality. First, understand the environment. Then, understand human motivation. Then, calculate the best course of action. This is why ancient strategy still feels strangely modern. Because the battlefield changed, but human nature didn't. Today, the war is psychological. Attention wars, status wars, business competition, political narratives, social positioning, and the people who rise highest are usually not the most emotional. They are the most aware, applying this to modern life. Once you understand these principles, daily life starts looking different. Choosing a career? Study long-term trends first. That's adaptation. Ask whether the path genuinely benefits your future. That's incentive analysis. Then build a strategic plan to enter the field. That's calculation. Even social relationships become clearer. Most people become confused by human behavior because they analyze emotions instead of incentives. But when you understand what people value, fear, or seek to gain, their decisions suddenly become predictable. That doesn't mean becoming cynical. It means becoming realistic, and realism is often the beginning of wisdom. Most people read The Art of War as a book about conflict. But people who truly understand it see a book about life, a philosophy of adaptation, clarity, timing, human behavior, and strategic awareness. The deeper lesson is not aggression, it's perception. Because once you stop reacting emotionally to every situation, you begin asking better questions. What are the incentives here? What patterns are repeating? What variables am I ignoring? What game is actually being played? And when you begin thinking that way, life becomes less chaotic. Not because the world became easier, but because your awareness became sharper. Remember this: emotion reacts. Strategy observes, and the people who quietly understand the game often control outcomes long before everyone else realizes a game was even being played. If you want more deep insights into strategy, human nature, psychological power, and timeless wisdom, subscribe and join us on the path toward deeper awareness.